Hello.
Hello.
Hello, welcome to the stream.
Thank you. Good to be here.
And also, hello,
Hello.
Swagshaw.
Thank you so much for having us.
Absolutely. So, how shall I address each of you? I see, I'm assuming we've got Aaron Shaw and Zachary Richman here.
Yes, that's
Mm,
us.
Shall I just address you by first name? Is that all right?
Sounds great.
Uh, I'm good with Zach. Yeah.
Zach? Okay, Zach, Aaron, thank you so much for joining me. Would you be able to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your role on the project? I guess starting with just alphabetically.
Sure. So my name is Aaron Shaw. I am one of the directors and kind of the producer of the team. Um, some of the things that I do is just make sure that we're running on schedule and looking at like, are we hitting milestones at the appropriate time.
Nice. All
Yeah.
right. And Zach.
Uh, and I'm Zach. I'm the other director. I guess Swag and I call him Swag too, so I know we're calling him Aaron, but if I say Swag, apologies. Aaron and we kind of like double team, kind of manage the project. I mean, a lot of like my role ends up being a lot of bit like big idea concept stuff. Not that Aaron doesn't do that as well, but together we manage the team and kind of set goals and expectations and make sure the best version of this game comes to life.
Nice. All right. I mean, I see you don't have a dedicated like designer on your team. So is that sort of a role that you share?
So we originally did have a designer on the team that actually unfortunately had to step away from the
Hmm.
project for personal reasons. Funny enough, that actually is kind of a hole we're looking to fill soon enough. But right now because there's not a big push for art, I guess there's some other big stuff we're working on like on the back end. Yeah. But that was a role we did have. But you know how things happen with these types of projects sometimes,
Of course.
especially with COVID, personal things get in the way, and unfortunately, a team member did have to step away. But it happens, and that's a role we're currently looking to fill.
All right. And can you talk a little bit about what the original inspiration for the game was?
Swag, you want to take that one?
Sure. Yeah. So we all joined together for GMTK 2020, and the theme that year was out of control. And so we had a giant brainstorm for the game jam. It was 2 days, and we landed on something that was we found pretty interesting. The genre mix between a tower defense and a bullet hell, which uh, is still to this day we find it to be pretty insane.
Yeah, and like jumping off of that, as Swag mentioned, the theme was out of control. So I think like what really got us here was like, oh, what if there was a tower defense game, but your towers were out of control, and like you had no control of who they attacked, so they could attack anything, even you. Uh, which like to us just like sounded like a really like never before seen idea. And that just got us excited. Like, okay, this feels new and fresh, and like a concept that has a lot of legs to it. It kind of just all happened from that.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, I think it was really evident to me as I was playing the game, um, how a lot of the design decisions really clicked together. Um, I started out the first hour of the stream. I don't know if you saw, but I was just playing the game because I figured this is not going to be a game like a bullet hell. Is not going to be a game that I can play while talking. So I figured I'll just play the game at first, get some impressions of it, and that way I can just like chat with you guys about it. And the fact that the drops disappear, uh, I know that it's like, oh, it sort of drops disappearing was an artifact of like hardware limitations and it's not something you have to do anymore. But I understand that it's here deliberately to like encourage the player to move around because otherwise you could just hide in a corner, wait till the round's over, and then pick everything else up.
Yeah, good catch. That's a very deliberate choice for the exact reasons you said. Like even the very first iteration of this game, which was the Game Jam version, which obviously the game has grown a lot since then. But even in that first iteration, we were like, yeah, we need to incentivize players to get out of their comfort zone and put themselves in danger. Otherwise, we don't want players like hanging out in the corner the whole time, find a little safe zone, and then just running it after. We really want to like not encourage that type of gameplay because then, like if people can find a way to cheat a game, they'll cheat the game, even if it's not fun. So we want to like small things like that really just help encourage and the ideal form of gameplay.
Absolutely. Yeah, I guess you can see one of the things that I immediately tried to do was see how many towers I could stack up just in a row so that as many of their bullets would be overlapping as possible. But even then, I still made it quite difficult for myself.
How far did you get?
I made it to wave 13 at the end as my last attempt.
Ah, that's pretty good. Nice.
I'll have to take your word for it. I mean, what would you say is like an average score in the game? Or how far are you expecting someone to get on their first playthrough?
Oh, that's a question. I don't know, Swag. What do you think?
Yeah, so I mean, like one of the things that we I think we've seen in the background is like some people are on average willing to quit the game after like 5 minutes, but like when you really start to give that extra 10-15 minutes, all of a sudden getting past like wave three becomes like, all right, I'm going to get to wave nine, or like, oh, I see what I did wrong with the last time I did it. Like I was actually watching you. Is On average, it takes like 3 or 4 deaths before all of a sudden like 30 minutes have passed and you're like, oh man, it's starting to click and like I'm getting further than I was. Um, yeah.
Uh, Also, to help put that in perspective a bit, Vimlark, who's another streamer who's a buddy of ours and a fan of the game, by his own admission, sucks at bullet hells and always gets to around wave 6, even though even though again by his own words he says he sucks at bullet hells. So I feel like that's maybe like yeah around the 4 to 6 for like the true beginner is good because it's a surprisingly tough game at first, and that's by design. Um, but as Swag said, as you keep going, you get further and further, and that's where the kind of the real enjoyment of the game, in our opinion, comes from. But also give a little perspective. Actually, I did catch the end of your last round, and I think the leaderboard you had there is a little outdated. Maybe because you're using a different version of the game that we secretly gave you. But right now, the number one rank is actually Wave 70, which is insane, and we have no idea how they did it. But just to put into perspective, just how crazy some of the our players can get, and how amazing they are, and how they're better than the devs even.
Oh yeah, there's always going to be those people out there. Um, have you thought about including the option to like slow down the game speed and make it a little more like some other accessibility options for people who, like myself included, are not good at these kind of bullet hell games?
Yeah, we have actually. So one thing that this is not in the game, and nothing we really say that we think about always makes it into the game. Just
Of
as a little
course.
little preamble. But something that we have talked about before is like like a bullet time feature that like maybe giving players a gauge that they could use to like slow down time and weave through bullets.
Mhm.
But even larger than that, accessibility as a whole is very important, as you know, in any game. And the game right now doesn't have a lot of accessibility options. It does have some like cursor size, especially for people who have a hard time seeing and things like that. Accessibility is definitely something we want to really focus at a little later in the development process. Our kind of number one accessibility is really important, but it's hard to focus on it when there's so much left of the game to build still. So like it's just about finding the right time to do it, but it's definitely something I think we would definitely love to like really hone in on some more accessibility features for people who are differently abled.
Yeah, of course, but it's not even that about like accessibility features benefit everyone, right? Like if there was an option in the game to turn down the game speed and just have a little more wiggle room to bob and weave between things, I would totally be fine with trading off. Like I don't need to place on a leaderboard. I just want to see how far I can make it. Because I understand that if I'm making the game easier for myself in that respect,
Yeah,
then I shouldn't be ranked against the same players who are playing at the like intended game speed.
yeah. So we did actually for one of the versions that we built for the game. I think it was for Cool Math Games. They reached out to us and was interested about our game. Um, we developed a mode where you're just not taking damage from the bullets. Now, we did have a large internal discussion on like, does that represent the kind of game that we're wanting to make? At the end of the day, it's we're wanting to make sure that the game is accessible, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
if somebody doesn't enjoy a bullet hell, but they do enjoy a tower defense, it's a part of the market that can still be reached out to. And so, just not taking damage from bullets or other discussions that we've had have been like, all right, maybe we increase the amount of invulnerability that you get when you're taking damage. Like you get hit by a bullet, and instead of like a quick second, you have like two, maybe three. Those kind of minor tweaks are the very things that you're talking about in modes of accessibility. Yeah, the ability to like slow down enemies is an interesting one. It's something that might be difficult about it is like an issue of scope is like, we have a lot of different enemies and a system that's like behind all of those enemies. Um,
Oh, let me just clarify real quick. I wasn't suggesting to slow down enemies. I was suggesting to slow down bullets, but it would kind of necessitate slowing down everything in the game because if the
mhm,
bullets travel slower, they're not hitting the enemies unless they track. And yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, that's we kind of have like a really fun cursed problem with our game is like the way that it's set up is the solid foundation, and so
hmm,
like the minor tweaks that we have to make uh, really do start affecting things really dramatically. Like, if we increase or decrease the amount of drops that are placed, like all of a sudden you have more towers than you need, or you have less towers than you need,
yeah,
and the health increases over time for the enemies as well. And that's
yeah.
that's
Yeah.
yeah.
I, I guess that's something
Uh,
that I couldn't tell exactly that was happening. The enemies were just like scaling up in health,
Mhm.
um, because I don't know. Like it really it's something that maybe comes with the genre savviness, but I can sort of expect if the same enemy is going to reappear at a later time with a different amount of health, I would expect there to at least be a palette swap to indicate that. Just
Mhm.
something so that I know it's like, okay, these guys are more serious. Like if I just never see those enemies that whatever their starting color is at the beginning of the game,
Mhm.
um, is just an indication to me, like, okay, that guy that round was all yellow guys. I beat all yellow guys at the beginning of the game. How come that was so much harder? And it's not to say that I play that many tower defense games. Like I've made a couple tower defense games, um, but I guess I enjoy making tower defense and unusual tower defense games more than I necessarily enjoy playing them.
yeah.
Um,
Like I say,
because
making. Oh, sorry.
yeah,
I was just say, like making a tower defense. As you said, you've actually made a couple, but uh, uh, there's a lot of really unique challenges with it, and kind of in that world that you're talking about. Because like obviously, like this, our main game mode, at least right now, is like this endless mode. So how do we maintain it keeping things endless with a limited amount of assets that we've created? Because we can um, unless we're getting to algorithms and things like that, which it's not impossible, but obviously more scope. We're working with like the assets that we created to kind of create this endless mode. So it's kind of I guess what you're talking about is kind of a result of this type of game mode.
mhm.
But as you know, as the game continues to grow, there's a lot of things we're adding to the game, and including a lot more art and game modes and all this stuff. As we kind of continue tackling all those individual problems, I think a lot of those smaller things will, by nature, resolve themselves because we'll be building assets for different game modes, and we'll have modes that better like our other game modes will probably better reflect the type of gameplay you're talking about versus our endless mode. The very nice thing is that this game is still a living, breathing thing that
Yeah, of
is
course.
continue to be developed. But yeah, what you're saying is kind of just a symptom of the endless game mode, I'd say.
Yeah, and I wouldn't say that it has to be solved with more art. Like I get that adding assets to the game is not feasible, especially if something is meant to be in endless mode. But even in that, in the case of having something like um, whatever enemy you have your cursor over has a health bar or something, and then you can see the numbers. Like, oh, at the beginning of the game, that enemy had 5 health, and now it has 13. Like, oh, okay, I get a sense of feedback that the enemies are getting tougher over time. Um,
Funny you say
Something
that.
that you
There's
can
actually
solve
some system.
systematically.
That's funny you say that. We've actually we're looking at we've looked at some of those systems actually, and that's something that I mean again don't know if stuff like that is
Yeah, it's not a
can't
guarantee.
promise anything, but
Sure.
at least our one of our programmers came with a whole bunch of really awesome look and feels for what stuff like that could look like for showing enemy health, which is on our radar, but there's just a lot of bigger picture stuff we're working on first, but that stuff is
Sure.
definitely on our radar, and I think you make some great points, and definitely something we're thinking about.
Yeah, like don't think of this as an interrogation. Like think of this as just an
Oh no
open
no no no
discussion
no
of like,
no!
yeah, you know,
It's really cool hearing about it because this is all stuff we're already thinking about. So it's really it's but of course from the you're a dev yourself, like from the podium of the dev, like we're thinking about all of these like long term things, but it's really amazing to hear like oh from a guy who just played the game, what are the things that that the player is thinking about? And although we have a really great community of people who play our game, especially on our Discord, who we have a really great community of people who like love the game and play the game and give us really amazing feedback. It's always nice to kind of get a perspective from outside of that, like a fresh pair of eyes that like from a fellow dev who's not kind of like one of the main devs, like sitting on with the bird's eye view, but someone who's on the ground just played the game, you know?
well, yeah, not to mention the fact that I'm very conscious of the times where you get feedback where someone says, "Oh, this would be cool if you just added like a whole bunch of unique animations," and it's like, "Whoa, whoa, 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 slow down, slow down." I know it art is expensive. Like development is expensive. Like anything that is a unique asset is expensive. That's not to say that you always have to go with necessarily the most expensive solution. Sometimes you can telegraph something with just a couple lines of code, like um, well, I won't start getting into examples, but yeah, for the sake of this game, um, it's kind of a very minor problem at the end of the day that like whether enemies are increasing in health and whether the player is aware of that. Like they're just taking more hits over time. That is not a significant gripe by any means. Um,
I
one
found
thing I
it.
actually go ahead.
Yeah, I found it really interesting that you mentioned it as a mouse over. I was watching you when you were starting off, and you had, I think you had like had the questions like, can I use a controller on this? I was like, no, that wouldn't make sense. You have a version that a controller could be used inside of this game. Um, uh, and one thing that we try to keep inside of our mind when developing this game is what kind of design choices can we make that allow for not only a mouse but also a controller to work together, or maybe not together, but like if you're in one mode, it should also be something that you should be able to experience in the other mode. So if you would mouse over it with mouse, I think that's a really interesting and straightforward solution. But then it becomes a question of like, all right, how do you do the same thing with the cursor?
Yeah,
Uh,
with the controller, it's much more difficult.
yeah.
Um, so one thing like among your maybe like top players, do you see people building towers live while like a wave is moving?
Oh yeah.
Sometimes,
Um,
yeah.
I mean, obviously, the majority of the prep, just like how you experience in your game, I'm sure, is like in between waves. But like,
Mhm.
yeah, for those like But those bold players, like they just get enough currency for another lock on shot. They're throwing
Hmm.
that bad boy down right away, just like especially during a tricky wave that they don't think they're gonna make. Uh, which is honestly that's the kind of gameplay really love to see because like oh that's hard to master, but that's something else. That's a little personal goal you can set yourself. Oh, I want to get better at like putting down towers while you're in the middle of like hellfire. But yeah, a lot of the higher end players tend to do that.
Yeah, okay, interesting. Because it struck me as something that's like, wow, there's a lot going on. I don't know if I'd be able to take my eyes off of my player character long enough to put my cursor over to the UI to click the tower that I want and then be able to move to a place where I can drop it down and be able to think on my feet like that.
The
So
nice
it's
thing,
no
nice thing,
surprise to me that some people can manage it, but
oh for sure. But the nice thing is that it's not necessary.
right.
It's one of those things that like it's one of those just gameplay moments. Like if you can master it, it's something else in your holster that you can use. But
Mhm.
you by no means you need to master it to like get far in the game. Like I don't typically play that way. Maybe excuse me, maybe one or two towers if I'm really in a pinch. But like for the most part, I don't play that way, and I get. I mean, I'm one of the devs, I know, but I do pretty good, you know. So it's definitely not needed for to play the game, but like something that it's really nice to see players master something that we didn't even intend for. Really, we're like we maybe thought players would do it, but we weren't really expecting it out of the players.
Yeah, you're
So it's
not
really neat to
forbidding
see.
it, but you're not necessarily encouraging it.
Exactly. So it's really incredible to see that kind of like gameplay moments just emerge naturally from the player itself.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I guess sort of cycling back to my original batch of questions here a bit. Um, what has the development process been like for the game? So this has been, I guess, in various forms of development since the 2020 jam.
Mhm.
Yes. I mean, started off with the 2020 jam, and since then there's been like a fair amount of updates. Some smaller, some bigger. Like we had like an update shortly after the jam that was like just like kind of quality of life, fixing a lot of things that we saw from like the initial version because you know how initial jam versions
Yeah.
are. But we've had many updates since then, adding new enemies. We have like that casual mode that Swag talked. That's not in the version that you have right now because we're saving some things in our back pocket for like different future releases. But we added the power ups for late edition, which are the wrench swing. That's new. And then
What does that
something.
do? What does the wrench swing do?
Reflects bullets.
Oh my god, I had no idea. Is that I should have read the instructions more carefully.
It is in the how to
Wait,
play, and actually, I joined in just as you were like, "Oh, where's the how to play in the pause menu?" Which is something we clearly need to add. But it should be. Oh, is it not on there? I'd be really embarrassed if it's not on there.
It should be the
yeah,
first one.
deflect bullets. There it is. Select and place
Oh, okay.
tower slash deflect bullets. Oh my god.
Yeah, maybe we should make a bigger deal of that. Maybe add a little wrench icon, but just give it a little more prominence. But it is there, and it's a really neat. Again, a mechanic that's like actually fun enough that I think that mechanic kind of came naturally from like our players suggesting stuff, which was really cool. But a hard one to master, but once you do, it's like it's not hard. It's not hard to do, but it was hard to master because like it's really easy to deflect bullets. We made sure to give players a lot of leeway, but like getting good at the aiming takes a little bit of practice, but it's so satisfying once you kind of nail it. And we have some ideas to make that even more exciting in the pipeline, like maybe making deflected bullets do more damage and be able to upgrade that. Maybe like there's some cool stuff in the pipeline to make that even more of a prominent feature.
Yeah, it was definitely one of those issues where I read that at the very beginning of the game before I knew at all what I was doing, and then by the time I'm like several rounds, like 45 minutes into the game, I'm like, oh yeah, I can swing my wrench. What does this do?
Well, maybe next time we'll see you do some cool bullet deflecting action.
If I was able to get up to wave 13 with no bullet deflection, um, I'm not going to try to play that far again, and that's because of my motion sensitivity. Another reason I'm not playing the game right now is because the camera shake was kind of nauseating. Um,
That's good to know. Actually, maybe we can make that toggleable. Actually, that's
I'd love
probably
that
a good
personally.
accessibility idea.
Mm.
It's one that's really easy to add, right? Like you've already got a interface for no, that's the wrong button, but you've already got the interface for your settings menu. You've already got a little toggle button here. So if one of these toggle buttons, because I thought that's what Rumble was, and I was like, well, hang on, I guess that's when you're playing with a controller is the
Mhm.
rumble feature.
Mhm.
Mm. Yeah.
But yeah, if screen shake was an option that you could toggle off, I would certainly be foremost in appreciating that.
For sure.
And also just to kind of, I know I already said this earlier, but just to reiterate, like this is why what I love about kind of like doing things like this, and like we're like watching someone play and getting feedback from someone who like isn't in our like community, because as much as our as amazing as our community is, feedback is definitely biased within that sphere. So like we've never even heard anything like that before. But like I personally right away I'm like, oh, that's a good idea for accessibility reasons. And like you get so many little nuggets just for other devs listening and stuff. You get so many little nuggets by just like going outside of the initial circle of people who play your game. Like, I think you find a lot more like neat little nuggets of insights that
Yeah,
come with
absolutely.
like small things like that.
It's one of those things that sort of comes from the fact that most people don't have as severe motion sensitivity as I do. So it's for most people not a problem in the way that for a significant percent of people like color blindness is not a problem, and then suddenly you run into a person for whom it is a problem, and then it's like, oh yeah, wow, we need to do something about that. um,
So I want to put it out there. You were asking about features. I don't know if you've seen the map maker yet.
yes, I have
Uh,
not.
I would highly recommend it. It's something that we've spent a lot of time on. It makes our community larger, and I would love to hear some of your feedback on what we got going.
Absolutely, I'll be more than happy to take a look at this. um, but okay, let's just really quickly test. Ooh, we got an autumn tile set. That's really nice. I'm gonna stick with standard and standard for all this. Um, oh, okay, and you can make water. So what is there? Okay, yeah, dirt. I can mouse over stuff, removes trees outside of the playable area. What is the difference between dirt and grass?
So dirt is where you cannot place a tower. Grass is going to be
Oh,
where
okay,
you
it's your
can.
path.
Yes,
Wait, oh, because you've got
it doesn't
decorations.
exactly. You don't automatically make a path. You do have to make one manually for the enemies.
I see. Yeah, okay. Um, okay, I see. You can resize stuff, and you can even create waves and everything. Wow, wow.
Oh yeah. So like as Swag mentioned, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears went into this particular game mode, because we felt it was really important to put creativity in the hands of the players, and honestly it's been a wonder. Like I know you kind of took a look at the community tab for a second there in the map maker menu, and like just like so many maps have been made, and the ideas that these players are doing is insane, and we're looking to add even more stuff to the map maker that's already under in works right now, that's going to give even more freedom and creativity and put that all in the hands of the players. Um, and like we're just like flabbergasted by that. And from a dev perspective, like not only is this like just a really cool thing to have in a game, like letting players make their own stuff, but it also adds longevity to our game. You know, obviously we have not only do we have gameplay, like our main game mode already promotes longevity, like and beating your high score, but we have more game modes underway that will continue that. But like being able to like go daily into a game that you love and like see there's a bunch of new maps available for you just to try out, and maybe some of them are kind of new game modes that players have had ideas for. Like it's really like an amazing from a dev perspective, even just putting the creativity and creation of content in the hands of your players. And I think that really is a really smart thing for the game to have if it works for your game. And I believe for our game it works wonderfully.
Oh my goodness. Wow, this is really comprehensive. So has this map making mode comprised most of the um, development effort since the game released?
Yes and no. We spent a large amount of time. So we had the first sprint of polishing the game after the game jam, and then we had a very large amount of time being spent on getting our game to a demo point. Basically, what you played was what we were really polishing the game to, and then I would say that's comprised half of our production, and then the last half has been for the map maker itself. So this has been something we wanted to make sure that there would be longevity in the gameplays. It can always be new because there will always be somebody making something for it.
Yeah. And I know Swag said half this, half that, but I'm gonna add a third half, which I know is mathematically incorrect. But that third half I would say is for like future like ideation. Like we have a lot of stuff like in the hopper for like new game modes, new towers, an upgrade system, and all this other stuff that like is something we're doing and either actively working on or in the process of kind of like or like set aside while other things take priority. But there's a lot. There's been a lot of time and effort to like the future of this game and what's going to continue coming out, which we're really excited for.
Yeah, nice. I mean, it's really cool to see the variety of stuff that people are coming up with already. Um, how have you been? Have you had to worry about like content curation at all? Like, have you had to, or
Yeah,
are
yes
there?
and no. I mean, like, we kind of allow people to make whatever so long as it's not offensive or derogatory, right?
Right.
But we do have a report button. We made sure to add that so we can scale and properly, like, if somebody were to make something that's inappropriate, we can just be like, all right, we take that one out. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Some words are also well, many words are actually not allowed in the naming part of the map as well. That goes for like username creation and stuff for leaderboards as well. But we have a whole slew of words that like that are not allowed to ensure there's nothing offensive or derogatory being shared on our content creator.
Yeah, I mean, I can totally imagine a like you've got the sort of standard library of words that you've got to strike and remove from the when it's allowed.
Yeah,
This is
we found a list online, and then we took that and kind of went through every. I remember going through every single word because some words were like, no, that could be allowed because it was like
yeah,
something that's like not really an issue.
yeah,
Or we added new ones like this is clearly missing, like because
yeah.
there's new words being added all the time. But yeah, we made sure to really put a lot of
Oh no.
time into making sure uh, all the right words were not allowed.
Yeah, sounds good. But yeah, like this is incredibly comprehensive, and I wouldn't be able to both talk and give feedback on this at the same time. So maybe I'll have to go through this another time. But just as far as the interview portion of things goes for today, um, I know Swag, Aaron, you've got to get going soon.
yes.
But
Hey,
any?
thank you. Oh, what you got?
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, if there's any closing thoughts, anything you want to mention before you got to get going.
I would just say how much of a delight it's been to see you play the game, enjoy it, and to hear your feedback as a fellow game developer. This is I think one of the most enjoyable parts about making the game is everybody feels like you get to make a new friend every single time you talk to somebody. So again, I really appreciate you having us, or rather,
Yeah,
at least having
absolutely.
me. Zach's still with you for a little while. So thank you so much for having me, and I really hope to hear more from you.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, thanks a lot, and yeah, hopefully we're gonna have another opportunity to talk again soon.
Fantastic. You have a nice one. Bye.
Yeah. Bye bye. All right. So, Zach, I
Yeah.
guess if we're sort of gonna keep on going with the interview for a little bit longer, then, um, are there any sort of things that you want to talk about, like upcoming features that you're like more sure on that are coming maybe sometime soon, or general plans for the
Sure.
future?
Well, you know what? just to make sure I'm not giving away anything, I'm
I
not
was gonna
allowed to
say, is
give
there
away
anything that
yet.
anything that you're uh, for sure good to talk about?
Well, we
If
actually
not, we
just
don't
did a
have. We
big.
can sort of take the
Oh yeah,
conversation a
no
different way.
worries. We actually did a really big announcement recently on our Discord about a bunch of new stuff. So I'm just gonna I can kind of go over some of those talking points.
Absolutely.
Uh, kind of. Well, probably the biggest thing we're working on right now is actually, if, weirdly enough, not about the game itself, but it's about pitching the publishers. So
Yeah.
we're at that stage where like we're confident with the amount of content we have in our game that we're like, okay, now it's time to get a publisher on board so we get the resources we need to get this thing finished and
Hmm.
have them market it and like get it out into the real world. So that's a lot of time has been going into that and effort because that's a whole another project and process in and of itself. It's like getting a pitch deck ready, you know, reaching out to publishers, having the presentations. But it's kind of a really unique journey of the game dev process. So it's been a unique challenge, but a really rewarding and fun one. So we're kind of gearing up for that right now, and our deck is well underway, and um, obviously that's not about the game itself, but it is a reality of the dev world, and so I think it's always important to kind of talk about those back end stuff as well. But on top of that, we also got like some crazy new like systems for the map maker. Something that actually we didn't mention on our Discord, but maybe I'll give a little like sneak peek here. We're kind of adding our like, I guess essentially like our own version of like Minecraft's Redstone, like
Ah.
stuff that allows players to do like essentially like coding and systems within their maps themselves. Like we're playing around with it right now. Like you could like make a mini calculator or a counter and stuff in our maps now. So like players will be able to do systems where like every even wave, only this path is available for any enemies to take. But every odd wave, these like blockers block that path, and all enemies are taking this path now. Like really adding more creativity and putting that into the hands of the players. So that's something else we're working on for the map maker, which we're really excited about. And we're also working on another new game mode. This one I'm gonna hold off going too deep into because it's
Sure.
still this one's very preliminary, but we kind of just starting now to gear up and like get the coding has already started and the kind of like some of the legwork that's not coding is just starting now as well. Without going into too much detail, but it's like it's gonna add like a lot of more distinct levels and progressive gameplay, which we're super excited about. Um, it's also just like having another new game. Like we're obsessed with adding new game modes, new ways to kind of take these systems and these ideas and breathe new life into them. So we're very excited for that. Uh, and then a couple of other smaller things. Like we're looking to add a shop feature where people could like upgrade their health and upgrade their wrench and their
Hmm.
bombs and stuff mid game. We're looking on an adaptive soundtrack right now, where like 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 when you start a wave, the music will get more intense, but it's the same
Hmm.
track still. You know, obviously our sound engineers kind of um, taking that one at the helm, but like adding stuff like that that's a little more like polishy, but still like stuff that gets us excited. And of course, I think I've already mentioned before an upgrade system where you can actually upgrade your towers to make them more powerful and give them like unique status effects and stuff. Some of the details of that are still being ironed out, but the system is like kind of already been on our end created. So now it's about okay, how is exactly does this like look in a UI perspective? Getting new art for some of our tower upgrades shortly, um, things like that. So obviously that was a big dump. That was a bunch of stuff I just shared. Uh, but yeah, that's kind of some of the stuff we're currently working on that's got us excited.
Nice. Yeah, there's I can totally see there's a lot of different vectors you can take the game. Like there's the vector of the community engagement and map like custom map stuff. Like anytime you give players the ability to add their own logic to a map editor, like that's how we got Dota from the original Warcraft. That is effectively how tower defense games were created in the first place, as well as Dota as a genre. Like people just messing around and modding for a completely different genre of games. So I'd love to see where that ends up going. And
Yeah,
other than that, yeah, I guess. Hmm. There is one thing I wanted to mention. I know we were talking about the accessibility options kind of like much earlier on, and I think it's absolutely right to prioritize the features that are going to help, especially if you're trying to pitch the game to publishers now. There's a lot of like upfront polish you want to make sure you're doing on the game. The only thing I wanted to mention is from an like a architectural standpoint, unless you were planning on rebuilding a significant portion of what's already there. Um, just try to anticipate what accessibility options you're going to have in the game. Like, try to figure out what those are ahead of time, even if you don't implement them, because it's going to influence decisions on how stuff works in the game. Like, if you're going to have localization in the game, and suddenly you need to go and implement Unity's translation package on every single button and every single UI panel in the game, and that means like retouching all of your TextMesh Pro assets. Like, it would be really nice if all of your text assets in the game were just one prefab, and you can make all your changes to that one prefab. And that's just a small example of where you think, oh, we don't need to worry about, like, not that you don't need to worry, but that if you aren't thinking about the fact that you're going to add localization or you're going to add the ability to like resize text later in the game, then you might think, what do we need a prefab for text? It's just the text mesh pro component. Why do we need a prefab for that? But I'm in the middle of working on a game on contract basis where the decision was made to add translated and rescalable text down the line, and that meant having to go and retouch all the text assets in the game because we didn't have a prefab for them at the start. So just a that is why I would recommend trying to figure out what the features are going to be, and then just let that reflect on how the game is actually built um, from the ground up, so that you can sort of anticipate, like, okay, well, let's make sure that if we're going to build this one of two different ways, let's not preclude the possibility of adding this down the line.
yeah, that's a great point you're making, and totally agree. Like, and actually, we're funny enough, we're going through some of that stuff right now with we're working on a big UI. Something I didn't mention, we're working on a big UI overhaul right now. We're working with a really competent designer on that particular project, and we're really excited about it. And so, that's something we've been talking about. It's like, okay, we have to make sure these buttons have the size capacity for localization, um, which is very important to us. We want to make sure this game can be played by as many people as possible. That's just good business. But yeah, overall, like, we do have our like the fun thing about, not the fun thing, but the challenging thing about accessibility is that, like, I would say we already do have a small list of stuff that we got in the back of our heads. Okay, we want this, we want this, we want this. But like, even today, we never thought about screen shake, and you were like, oh, like, it'd be cool if that was toggleable, and we were like, oh, that's a great idea. So like, we kind of do have our list, but it's always fun. It's always kind of, I guess, kind of fun to see like other players find new ways that the game should be more accessible, and
Mm-hmm.
offer different unique insights, and so we could keep adding to that list, which sometimes could mean going back, like you said, and tweaking things to make some things work, especially on the back end. I'm not a coder myself, but there's so many times I'm like, hey guys, let's do this simple, easy thing. And they're like, oh, that's going to require this big rework. And it's worth it at the end of the day, most of the time.
Yeah.
But like, uh, uh, long story short, like, accessibility is very important for gaming, at least I believe. And we're lucky enough that we did start getting some of those thoughts in our game design a little early, but stuff always gets added. I find, which is really cool to see. So like, hey, if anyone else out there has any more accessibility ideas, throw them our way. We'll make this game as accessible as possible. So, aha.
Absolutely. Sam, you're saying UI shouldn't just be rectangles with white text. Yeah, yeah. Believe it or not, they don't look good in front of a publisher.
I mean,
Um,
it only if it's like the best gray.
yeah,
There's got to
there's
be
just
one
like
good gray out there, right?
yeah, every publisher has their own shade, and they don't tell you until the presentation's over. It's real mean. If you get that exact right shade of gray, I mean, it's just a automatic. They'll
It's
publish
an
your game for
automatic
you.
yes. Here's $1 million.
Yeah, and they change it every time too, so it really is a lottery.
Oh wow. Okay. So I better get cracking. Find my find my favorite gray soon.
Um, one other small thing, like I imagine, like the most of the community map stuff, like I notice you don't have the most space for characters as far as the map name. Is that because you had to add the report button, or did that just get was that just where it made sense to put it?
Well, that's kind of why we're doing a UI overhaul right now. Like when we, at least when it comes to like this menu, like UI is very important to us, but especially for like the actual like in the map when you're making the map, we took a long time. Like there still needs to be a rework of that stuff, but we did spend a lot of time like pairing things, putting things where we think they make the most sense, at least for a better designer to like kind of take that and run with it. This particular screen though, with all the maps, one of the things that we're talking to our UI designer about is each of these map modules, and like we need more space for the name. We want to have space for like a little description, or at least like a little eye icon that like opens up a window with the description, because like we're expecting people to keep making like different new game modes that you won't be able to understand just by the title itself. But then, of course, finding space for the report button and the play button, the download button. So uh, a lot of he's got a follower goal. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Uh, Hell yeah. So yeah, that when we were first doing this first iteration of this, we were like, we need a true UI person to get their hands on this to make it look amazing. And we really wanted just like, okay, this is, we don't like saying this very often, but good enough for now, because we
Mhm.
really wanted to like get the plate. Our the map maker version of our game is exclusive for our Discord and Patreon people, and we really wanted like the get the play testing of this map maker like underway ASAP, so we can make tweaks and change things. So yeah, kind of the kind of, I guess not clunky nature, but a little of the cluttered nature of this is based off like not true designers getting this, or at least not true like art designers getting this in a good enough state for playtesting, knowing full well that we will be remodeling this in the short future.
Exactly. Yeah, that is the key point there. So just real quick, I'm just going to acknowledge that, like, yes, hello, Slime Boy the King. Thank you so much for the follow. Thanks for hitting the follower goal. We're going to have a bonus stream, an entire extra weekend feedback stream that is going to be taking place at a earlier time in the day, maybe going for a little longer, so that anyone who wants to get their game, um, get feedback on their game, have a call like this one where we just like talk through the design of it, any challenges you might have. That's going to be the whole point of that. So keep an eye out for that in the near future. Um, but to your point, uh, it is absolutely the right call to get that kind of like gray boxed interview. Sorry, interface is what I meant to say. Uh, into the game, see where it works, see where it fails, see what needs addition, see what needs like reworking, because you shouldn't be trying to build the perfect version of your interface from the beginning. You want to keep some features in mind of like, okay, we want to have support for this, support for that. But inevitably, you're going to run into something that's like, oh, we need to change it. It's like, well, how much work did we just throw down the drain because we have to rebuild this? So it is
Exactly.
totally fine that it's in the state that it's in. Um, and it's great that you're planning on the rebuild, and, just steal it from Mario Maker, right? Like if you're thinking about like the thumbnail and the title, and I don't think Mario Maker has a description. I haven't actually played it myself, but
Yeah, that's honestly, we've taken a lot of inspiration from Mario Maker for this stuff. Honestly, because like a lot of games have done it already and done it really well, so it's important for us to uh, take what's kind of take inspiration from like the people who do it right already.
Yeah, exactly. You can always just borrow it from Nintendo because they do it so well.
Exactly.
Okay. Slime Boy just gave me a heart attack in thinking the audio wasn't working, but I assume they are referring to other people in the chat, not chatting. That's cool. People can
Okay, yeah.
chime in whenever they want to, if they have something they want to contribute, if they have some feedback they want to give the developer of Two-Timin Towers here. Um, yeah, people can chat if they want, or they can just passively watch if they want to as well. Um, so I guess we're kind of drawing it towards the close here, and maybe you can tell me a bit about where people can find you. Obviously, there is the Discord for the project. I'll once again share the link to Two-Timin Towers here in the chat for anyone who wants to try the public demo that does not have the map builder. But people can join up on the Discord if they are members of your Patreon. Am I reading this correctly?
The map maker version of the game is available for our Discord users and for our Patreon users. So those are two separate kind of user bases. Yeah, if you like, we have a really awesome community of gamers. I think almost 200 people now in our Discord who are all most of which are game devs, and even if they're not game devs, who just have an interest in that kind of community of really awesome people who play the game, give feedback, share memes, all this stuff. So you can definitely find us on Discord. Oh, you already put Twitter and Patreon there. Awesome. And Discord. Boom, got the links. So we have a really awesome community on our Discord, and you actually get our map maker version of the game on there. The reason why we did that because we want a smaller group of play testers and give our Discord like our fans on Discord like a little treat, a bit of a heads up because a lot of our newer features that we want to test out will probably only be exclusive for Discord until the full version of the game is done because
Mm-hmm.
we don't want to. They're a great sample size of people to get feedback from as we kind of test the waters of certain things. So if you want to kind of get a sneak peek of new features and announcements, and just join a really awesome community, come join our Discord. Our Twitter is also great as well. A great place to get updates. Um, and yeah, that's kind of where to find us.
All right, cool. Well, I guess that's where we're going to wrap things up, unless anyone in the chat has any questions. Um, Let me just think if there's any last bits of feedback. Nothing's jumping readily to mind, but I know there's stuff from the playtests, like if you want to call it that, what I started the stream out on. So if that would be of some use to you, I'll make sure to keep like I think Twitch by default keeps the VODs available for like 2 months now instead of just 2 weeks. So if there's any time where the interview is going to be archived for all time, but the playtest maybe not necessarily unless you really need it.
All right, well, that's good to know. We'll be sure to take a little gander at that.
Yeah, I think there's just going to be some stuff in there that I mention as I'm trying it out. Yeah, I'll hop into a game real quick and see if anything comes to mind readily. No, not too much. Okay. Um, is there a like save and quit to menu, or does it just like quit out?
Not right now, but especially with new game modes being added, that's likely something we'll be adding. Even and probably will also implement into the endless game mode. Um, yeah, that currently not in the game at this moment.
Okay, yeah, so that's just like a small thing. And then, given that that's the case, it's not an expectation that the game can save and quit, but if you can't save and quit, then it would be really helpful to know that clicking main menu is like, oh, hang on, are you sure you want to abandon this run? Like a little confirmation prompt to just interrupt you before you just quit out
Yeah,
by
yeah,
mistake.
that's actually funny you said that because that's actually something we're in the middle of implementing, not just here but also for the map maker because uh, uh, it was one of those things where like okay we could take it was one of those as I mentioned before like coding hurdles that like okay small aspect actually we need to change all these things or like do we want to wait a couple weeks to get that done or do we want to just get it out start getting feedback uh, But yeah, one of those with something we're doing because right now for the map maker, if you do exit while you're testing a map, it doesn't save it, which is a bug we definitely need to fix. But like for the sake of a smaller sample size, we're like, hey guys, just don't do that one thing, and we're fixing that. Don't worry. Um, but yes, that those types of systems we are adding to just help give players a lot of just like these like quality of life things to just make the moment to moment gameplay even easier to enjoy.
Yeah, all right. All sounds good. Well, Zach, thank you so much for joining me on the call today and talking about Two-Timin Towers. And you can even toggle the palette when you are in the game. Just notice that little feature in the bottom.
Oh yeah.
Cool.
But yeah, thank you so much for having me. This has been a blast.
Absolutely. Well, I look forward to seeing future versions of the game, maybe even having another discussion when there's another big feature drop. And yeah, I guess
Yeah.
until then, have yourself a good evening.
Thanks, man. Yeah, we'll love that. Definitely keep in touch, and I'll catch you later.
All right. Thanks
Bye.
again. Bye bye.